Welcome to 50 Countries March. We've got 5 movies to talk about this time, so I'm going to have to go through them a lot quicker than I have before. I was kind of slow the last 2 times, so yeah, we're going to try and condense it a little bit. And we got a good mix of some pretty dull movies and some pretty interesting movies. So let's get started with the 9th country, Thailand. So, the first film I watched was Bad Genius from 2017. This is the Thai film, or the film from Thailand, directed by Nathuwut Punpiriya. And these 2 lovely names, which I am not going to try and pronounce, I'm not going to try and bother, but I probably should have written down their nicknames because I know people from Thailand usually go by nicknames instead. I forgot. Lynn is a high school student, gets an opportunity to attend a private high school because of her high grades. She uses her smarts to help other students who bought their way into the school by sending them signals in exams to cheat. So she just finds a way to cheat during exams to help other people, and she ends up getting paid for it, and it's a whole scandal and stuff. That's sort of what the film's about, and it's a pretty interesting concept. There's plenty of high school movies, there's plenty of very similar high school movies, and I think it does something quite interesting by mixing it with the heist genre. I don't think it's really been done, maybe it has, but it was done in an interesting way. The scenes where they are taking the exams are pretty tense, they're very well filmed, very well edited, and it's definitely the best part of the film. I say that's definitely the highlight. The lead characters are pretty strong, the 2 leads, they're quite enjoyable, their acting isn't brilliant. But the rich friends, their acting's bad. It's similar to sort of Kamen Rider tier acting. It's got that very hokey, sort of over-the-top, anime-ish sort of feel to it. Yeah, and I wasn't a big fan of a lot of the side characters, but the 2 main characters I thought were pretty solid. Oh yeah, another thing, like Shin Godzilla and a lot of other films in Asia, the English actors are, like, their accents are so inconsistent. They're meant to be in Australia, and there's someone with a British accent, there's someone with a Russian accent. There's people with all kinds of accents, and it just, yeah, obviously people who are native Thai speakers wouldn't really, like, most of the Thai audience wouldn't really pick up on that. And they probably do the same in Western films with other languages, not understanding the different types of inflections and accents that come with that language. But yeah, it was a bit weird sort of being on the opposite end of that, actually seeing that, because I kind of know it's a thing. I also think it was quite a unique plot. I think it's something that hasn't been done before. It felt very unique. I didn't really know where it was going, which is something I always appreciate in a film now. And quite a lot with these films as well. I feel like I've felt that quite a few times. But like I said, the side characters were a bit weak, and probably one of its bigger flaws is that it went on a little bit too long. There's a lot of pretty pointless scenes, and the humour in the film was pretty bad. I thought there wasn't many points that I laughed during the film. I know comedy's subjective, but yeah, I didn't find this one particularly that funny, so that sort of fell flat for me. But yeah, it gets a 3.5. I thought it was a very nice film. Nothing special though. It's not reaching the top of this list.
Good! Yeah! Good! Yeah! Go, 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 get a lazy town. It's the start of a brand new day. Things are upside down here in Lazy Town.
So next up we have Children of Nature from Iceland. This is a 1991 film. It was nominated for Best Foreign Film in 1992 Oscars. Wait, no. Is it a year back or a year forwards? I think it's a year back, isn't it? So this year we would have the 2021 Oscars, even though there were 2020 films. And then there was some 2021 films, which is really stupid, but whatever. This film was directed by Frederick Thor Fredrickson, which is my new favourite name, as well as Gilsi Haldarsson and Sigrior Hagelin. This is a film following an elderly couple realising they grew up in the same area and want to go back to that place before they pass away. So they steal a car and make their way to their place of birth. Yeah, not exactly where you thought something like that would be going, but yeah, it's two old people who are kind of sick of their life and want to go back to the good old times, get away from the city, go back to where they lived in the countryside. Both characters are pretty likable, especially the lead character. I think you really feel for him in the beginning, first third of the film before they meet. They do a really good job of that. And the female lead as well, I thought she was really, yeah, I think they were both pretty likable. And they also had quite good chemistry. There was no, it's not a romantic thing, but yeah, you can understand why they would get along. It's not just because they were from the same area. They have a lot of the similar mannerisms. I guess they're a bit rebellious for people their age. Yeah, it's always quite interesting. Absolutely brilliant visual storytelling. It knocks out of the park with that. The first 10 minutes and the last 20 minutes of this film are done without any dialogue. The version I watched of the film, it had little, it said like who made the subtitles and stuff. Like it sort of ended, and I was like, wait, there's still 20 minutes left of the film, which is really confusing. But yeah, there's just no dialogue after that point, and I think that's when the film's at its best. If the film was like all the way through was like that, I would consider it like pretty fantastic, because those bits of the film are really well done. The film was well shot, but most importantly, I think it can convey a lot of emotion through the actions of the characters, their environments, and stuff like that. I think it gets that down really well. The middle of the film is pretty dull. I mean, it shouldn't be dull, because that's the point where they're like, running away from the police, or not running away, but driving away from the police and trying to get away. But yeah, it just sort of feels like one of those things where it's like just sort of a bunch of stuff happening, and yeah, I don't know. I think just compared to the beginning and the end of this film, it's very dull. I will also mention the weird supernatural elements of this film. This is not a very, it's not a fantasy film or anything. It's mostly grounded in reality. There's like one or two bits that are got some sort of like supernatural elements. We have a scene where they're driving in the car and it just disappears. There's a scene where there's a naked woman and she just sort of disappears, and they're like, oh yeah, it's a ghost. So, it's a ghost. That's what it is. And other characters can see it, not just the two main characters. They never really went the whole way with that. I think it's just sort of one of those things where it's like, yeah, just have a little bit of that in there. It didn't show up too much in the film, so it's not that big of a problem. But yeah, it's still weird. It's still weird and sort of out of place. But it's a 3 out of 5. I liked it. It can be quite dull, but it's a nice little film. It's a nice little Icelandic film for a nice little country.
And I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10.
So for Greece, we have Eternity and a Day from 1998, directed by Theo Angelopoulos. That's definitely not how it's pronounced. Starring Bruno Ganz, who also showed up in Children of Nature, and a lot of stuff. He's got a massive filmography. And Isabelle Renaud. Alexander is a widowed writer who spent his last years trying to finish an incomplete poem. He then encounters a boy who is homeless and moved from Albania. He promises to bring the boy back to his home. We also get to see portions of his life before his wife's death. This is another Palme d'Or winner, the second Palme d'Or winner, and I am very thankful to say this one did not bore me to tears. This was a good film. This was in fact, very good film. This film is very beautiful looking. I'll just say it right off the bat, this film is filmed really well. A lot of really good long takes. They're not afraid to use those, and yeah, you can understand why they're used each time they are used. It's not just for the sake of it. Although they do use this long pan a lot, like there'll be like some characters talking and then they'll pan to the other side and then something. They sort of use that as like a reveal, I think, way too many times in the film. The first time they do it is really good when they're on the Albanian border. I thought that was an excellent scene. Then they just kept using it and it's like, okay, we get it. But the long shots I loved. Most shots in this film are about a good 5 to 7 minutes long. I think that's pretty commendable, to be honest. I think a few of the flashback scenes always felt a little bit unimportant. Maybe they were, but I don't know. I never really understood the need for all of them. I love how they look. I already said this film is beautiful, but I love how everyone dresses in them when you see the family. And they've all got those like really, like the color contrast. They're all like these whites or light greys. And then I believe it's his wife that's got the black and white polka dot shirt. Don't know what's meant to represent, but it's very visually appealing and it matches the colors and just the entire look of the film. The themes of this film really kind of creep up on you. I think the main idea of the film with the poem and stuff is whether it's better to leave stuff as unknown or to seek out the truth of these things, to seek out what they actually mean, or just leave it as this mystery, because sometimes the mystery might be better than the actual reveal. There's a lot of stuff like that in the film. He has a neighbor that he doesn't know. You could tell he would clearly rather keep as a mystery. He wouldn't actually want to know who that is, because then that would ruin all the speculation. It's a lot of stuff like that in it that I really love. I love little stuff like that. I love films that don't like... I know there's a lot of films I've watched where I feel like it doesn't even give you a clue on what it's trying to discuss without you reading into it. But I like ones that can give you a little bit, and then you sort of have to infer from that point on. And I think this one does it excellently. I think it really nails that. My favourite scene in the film is one where Alexander and the boy get on a bus towards the end of the film, and it's not like a spoiler or anything, but it reminds me of the train scene from Spirited Away, just where it's just the atmosphere completely takes over, and you're just loving the moment, and I don't know, and it sort of bridges that entire film in that one scene. It's so clever and so lovely looking. I'm gonna be honest, this one's a 4 out of 5. This is nearly 4.5. But to be honest, I did feel like it kind of dragged for me a little bit, and the long shots do get a little bit excruciating. I didn't even begin to talk about the stuff with his mother. Those scenes are really powerful. There's a lot that's really powerful in this film, and I think it's one of the ones I could recommend the most. It's not all for me. I think it's a little bit. It goes a little bit over my smooth brain, but I think for some people who want, you cinephiles out there, with your top hats and your monocles. No, they don't wear top hats and monocles. But yeah, for all you people out there, all you Charlie Kaufman fans, this is probably one that's a little bit more your speed. But I was still able to really appreciate this one.
A great success. Woke up this morning, got some gabagoo.
I like this one. The one dog goes one way and the other dog goes the other way. And this guy's saying, what do you want from me? Guy's got nice.
So I think we're going in the exact opposite direction with this next film. Rats, Night of Terror. This is Italy's film from 1984, directed by Bruno Mattei, who's known for making films in a genre which name I can't say on YouTube, but contains films like Private House of the SS and Claudio Fragasso, who made a little film called Troll 2.
They're eating her. And then they're going to eat me. Oh my God!
Which is popularly referred to as one of the worst films of all time, if not the worst sequel of all time. Which, fun fact, I think his writing talent is so bad that I think he reuses that exact line in this film. This film is also starring Ottaviano Dell'Acqua and Garetta. Yeah, that's her name. Atomic bombs wipe out most of the human population, and those who stay live in a post-apocalyptic wasteland in 2000 AB. After the bomb. A group of Mad Max rejects playing live-action roleplay come across an abandoned bunker with plentiful amounts of food, clean water and plants. They then realise that all the rats in the building are plotting against them and killing them one by one. Jesus Christ. So as you know, with the title of my YouTube channel and my profile picture, I'm a massive lover of rats. I've never owned a rat, but I would love to own one. I think they're adorable little animals. I think they get such a bad rap. But they're so lovely, they're so cute. Oh, I just want one. And this film does kind of upset me because the rats are very clearly mistreated in this film. Like a lot of low-budget exploitation horror films. There's just like most of the death scenes are just people like getting rats dunked on them. Like off camera, there's clearly someone with just a bucket of rats and they just throw them on their heads. There's a scene that stood out to me when they find an abandoned bar and somebody's got a glass on him. He chucks it, or no, he doesn't chuck, he slides it across the bar and it hits a rat, knocking it over. And I thought, oh, it's just a toy rat. Now that rat's moving before that. That's a real rat that they just knocked over with a glass. I'm not going to show the scene because it's just straight up animal abuse. It's like, what? It's just it's pretty shocking, I guess. I mean, rats are like, you know, most societies would consider them vermin, so I get it. Like they don't really get treated, and they're not like fancy rats, like street rats. But yeah, it's still it's still very uncomfortable to watch. There's obviously, for a film like this, made by like two exploitation horror directors, there's a lot of nudity and there's a lot of gore. The gore in the film is okay. It's not terrible gore makeup. It's just regular cheap stuff. Nothing too surprising. And yeah, a lot of nudity. Which, by the way, this film is readily available on YouTube with full nudity of both genders. So yeah, there's a lot of films like that on YouTube. By the way, they just don't seem to. I guess if it's a film, you can get away with anything. You know, I'm actually like struggling to think what I actually can and can't say that's in this film, because even though it's on YouTube, all of it, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this one. There's also possibly some racism. Like I don't know how to talk about this, but yeah, there's a scene in this film where a black character covers himself in flour and starts screaming about how they're white, and everyone cheers her on. It's really uncomfortable, and I have no idea why it's in the film. I don't know. I just don't know. The plot makes no sense when you think about it as well. They could easily just leave the building. There's no reason for them to stay there, and it's just a massive plot contrivance in general. I'm going to give this one like a 1.5 out of 5. I usually enjoy films like this, but I think just because of the mistreatment of the rats, I just couldn't bring myself to enjoy it that much. Yeah, it was entertaining, but I can't actually say it's good. Oh, the ending.
And that isn't very poggers.
For the final film we got today and for this month, we have the Japanese film Submersion of Japan, aka Tidal Wave, from 1973. This film was directed by Shiro Moritani, starring Tetsuro Tamba and Hiroshi Fujioka, who you may know as the original Kamen Rider actor, but more famously known as Seiga Sanshiro. If you watch my Iceberg video, you would know this guy is absolute legend. During an expedition with a submarine that could reach Japan's ocean floor, they discover that an earthquake is imminent and hits Japan, taking the lives of 3 million. Another earthquake is believed to hit Japan within a year, and is set to sink Japan under the ocean. It's up to the Japanese government to try and save as many Japanese citizens as possible. So it's a natural disaster film. It's basically Independence Day, but it's a natural disaster. A lot of the natural disaster films from the 90s. It's that sort of thing. Yeah, the film is basically just like 2012 or something, you know. But actually, what's the word? Good. Yeah, so a little bit of history on this film, I guess. This is a film made by Toho, who are most famous for making the Godzilla films, a lot of sci-fi films from the 50s in Japan, and probably most famously the Akira Kurosawa samurai films. But during the 70s, I think they went a little bit more experimental with their special effects department. Most of that went to, I think in the 60s, it was mainly a lot of kaiju stuff. As you can see in the 70s, you had films like House, you had films like Prophecies of Nostradamus that were much more experimental with how they used effects, were less monster focused and more strange. And this one's a bit different even to those films, because this is a lot more high budget, a lot more realistic. It focuses on like an actual threat, which is feasible, but the special effects are still pretty grandiose. They're pretty huge, and they take up a lot of the film. They're a big focus in the film, and they are amazing. Like I gotta say that first and foremost. The special effects by Teruyoshi Nakano in this film are some of the best special effects I've seen from a early 70s film. I'd say like for films pre-Alien, pre-Star Wars, this is pretty incredible. I don't think it gets discussed enough for how good it actually is. The main reason for that is that this film has never really been properly distributed in its original Japanese language. We do have the version title wave, which I haven't seen, but the original version of the film has never been released here, and wow, it really needs to. I think Criterion really needs to get on something like this, or Arrow Video. I think they could definitely release this film. I will admit though, there's way too many geography lessons in this film. You know how in a lot of monster films they'll have a scene where there's a scientist explaining how the monster works, or the different monsters in the film, or some sort of biology about the monster. Instead, it's literally just geography lessons, real life geography lessons, and that is incredibly dull. At least you have that sci-fi aspect in a lot of those other films, but in this one, it's just a geography lesson, really. The characters are probably the best I've ever seen in a tokusatsu film, like ever. Of course, I love the ones in the original Godzilla 1954. And a few other casts I really like, but the characters here actually have different arcs and personalities, and they're actually like quite subtle. They're not like over the top or anything. They're not like cartoon characters. This is incredible for a tokusatsu. When people say like a Godzilla film from the Showa era has good characters, what they mean is that the characters had personality of some variety. These are actually good characters, not the focal point of the film, but they're interesting. You root for them, they have different motives, beliefs, ideologies, and they're just entertaining to watch. They're entertaining to watch, and obviously the actors are great as well. Tetsuro Tamba, I believe, is the Prime Minister. He plays a fantastic character in this. Hiroshi Fujioka, he's sort of like this film's Will Smith, I guess, in Independence Day. He's just very charismatic. He feels like the straight man in all of this, even though he's very talented. He works with the government and all that. He's still kind of a bit of a straight man role, and I quite like that. This was definitely a massive inspiration for Shin Godzilla as well. The more political aspects of the film, how I think this is definitely the first like tokusatsu film which really actually brings in governments from outside of Japan. This was really never done before properly. You have the United Nations in this film and stuff. And the first time that was done in a Godzilla film is The Return of Godzilla, which came out about 11 years later. So this must have helped that, but especially Shin Godzilla, there's clearly a lot of inspiration from that. One thing about this film that was really distracting was the music. The music is done by the same guy who does it for a lot of Akira Kurosawa's movies, but he also does the music for films like Godzilla's Revenge. I think he also did Son of Godzilla, and it has a type of sound to it, and it always kind of reminds me of those films, the more corny, cheesier Godzilla movies, and I just don't think it fits this kind of movie. I mean, it's going to be more distracting when I watch the Kurosawa movies, I imagine. But yeah, even though the music is really good, I think an Ifukube soundtrack would have just killed it in this sort of film. That would have been amazing. I think of all the films I've watched so far, this is the most underrated. I mean, the other films I thought were better than this, they actually have a bit of notoriety. They're critically acclaimed films, even if they're a little bit underground. People still love them. This is a complete forgotten classic. Like, I highly recommend people check this out, and I think it deserves a lot more notoriety than it does, especially in the Godzilla community. This is rarely talked about. I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5.
A great success!
And there we go, another month done. This video's gonna be a bit late. I'm sorry about that, but then again, I kind of already did it ahead of time because I knew this was gonna happen. But yeah, I'm trying to make my reviews of reviews of the film. I tried to make my reviews of the film a little bit more concise this time round. I think I doing what I'm doing now. I'm very slow. I'm gonna try and do that a lot less in the future videos, especially now that we're gonna be talking about more movies per video. So the ranking. This is the ranking as of now. And yeah. Still, Colombia's the best. Embrace of the Serpent was fantastic. Still the best. And then we got a new worst in the form of Italy. Which, yeah. I think that Colombia is probably going to be beaten, but Italy, no. I think that's the worst. That's as bad as it's going to get. Or at the very least, I hope that's as bad as it's going to get, because that was... So next month, I'm going to try and probably do 5, possibly 6. And I'm pretty busy next month, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fit these in. But yeah, in terms of other videos... I don't know. I genuinely don't know.